Well, we're gathering today. It's kind of it's a very ominous morning with an unauthorized attack by the U.S. on Venezuela and the capture of the president of that country and bringing him to the U.S. for trial. So the day will be filled with lots of comments, I'm sure, throughout the day. But I just note that that's the context, part of the context in which we meet today. I also like to say that next month, tentatively, we'll have a couple of people from um, the state of Puebla, Mexico, San Mateo in particular. And among them, I am hoping will be David Delgado, who has been so instrumental in getting the state to sign the Earth Charter and included Jubilee Economics Ministries in that ceremony. So that's what I hope will be happening next week. Well, today, oh my goodness, I didn't have the little important little book in front of me. So this is the book that is introducing me to Abby Mohaupt. Is that how you say it? Mohaupt?
It's close enough. Yes.
And Michael Malcom. And Michael is in Atlanta, Abby in Chicago, and they combined on writing this book for a moral economy with a foreword by Bill McKibben. Um, Now, this being my first time talking to Michael and Abby, my only knowledge of them really is in reading the book and in affirming the Building a Moral Economy initiative that Jubilee Economics Ministries is participating in with real interest because our missions just merged. But anyway, let's start off then with each of you. I don't know who wants to go first, but if each of you would tell us how the points of your life story that have brought you to this particular moment of understanding uh, in the ecological, economic, and spiritual formulation of your book. Who's first?
I let Doc go first. Always honor always honor the original.
So I'm Abby Mohaupt, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Northern Illinois. I grew up in Rockford, and which is kind of in the middle north part of Illinois, and grew up with parents who felt very sure about two things about our childhood. First is that we would always go to church, and second, that we would always be composting. Um, and those two kind of regular things um, shaped our life as kids, as my parents also from a young age taught us about doing anti-racism work and taught us about kind of some basic principles about how society is set apart or set set up um, and um, and just made it really clear that we are people who belong to each other and um, soon like I kind of grew up knowing and understanding that I would be a person of faith committed to ecology and ecological justice. Went to college in Illinois, came to Chicago to do my master's work, my MDiv work, and interned with Faith in Place, which is an interfaith environmental nonprofit, which was part of the Interfaith Power and Light organization. And Michael will say more about that collection of organizations in a little bit. But being at Faith in Place fundamentally changed how I thought about um, race, ecology, economy, place, um, and faith, and particularly how I, as a white Presbyterian person, trying to figure out my place in the world, kind of what my role would be in that. And then went to serve a congregation in Palo Alto in California, and really had one foot in that congregation while also supporting and serving a community of farm workers about an hour west of Palo Alto, and really was changed by that community of farm workers. And then I moved to New Jersey to do doctoral work, while also getting deeply invested and involved with the divestment from fossil fuels movement, particularly in the Presbyterian Church USA. And um, learned from Bill McKibben and organized alongside of him. And around that same time, started to work at Green Faith, an international interfaith environmental nonprofit, um, and which is where I met Michael. And we met doing organizing people of faith in the climate strikes work. And now I live in Chicago again, and deeply connected to and accountable to the environmental justice movements here, particularly around immigration rights and Palestinian justice, and kind of the integration of those in environmental justice movements here in the city. And I think one other thread that feels really important is that when I was kind of somewhere in all of that, I worked on an restore regenerative agricultural farm in Texas,
Oh
where I
my
helped
goodness.
raise where I helped raise over 100 chickens, um, and um, and and learned to be a parent to my child Juniper, and that felt really formative of who I am now doing environmental justice work. I think that's it. I think that's all. That's all I'll say. I'm sure I'll have more to say after Michael shares some of his story.
I
But
I do have I
yeah,
do have one follow-up question for you
yeah,
before Michael starts.
great.
Abby, you glided quickly past the being involved in the divestment movement for the Presbyterian Church USA. Now it happens that I'm also ordained Presbyterian
Oh,
USA.
yay!
But anyhow, I think you had more to do than just be involved in it. Didn't you have something to do in the authorship of, I don't want to overstate it, but you tell us without fear of bragging what your role was
Yeah,
in that
so
process.
for 10 years I was the moderator of Fossil Free Peace USA, the movement in the Presbyterian Church to divest from fossil fuels. We organized over 50,000 people over those 10 years to get the denomination to divest. Um, and was part of the behind the scenes movement to get the committee doing shareholder engagement to actually change their criteria so that they could divest from five fossil fuel companies, and then they as a committee um, changed the rules so that now they just add more every year. And So we didn't just get the denomination to divest, we also got the denomination to change the rules so that it was easier to make our denominations investments match all of our theological commitments.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll just say, Lee, that thank you for letting me brag for a second. It was I also wrote my doctoral dissertation on this movement,
Oh,
and and actually feel pretty proud of that leadership. There were many of us, about 35 of us, who led that work. And I we talk a little bit about it in the book, and yeah, just feel really proud of that movement.
Okay, well, good. So now I can be reassured that my pension that I receive every month is not is uninvolved in the fossil fuels
Well,
company.
that's part of the problem, actually, is that it's invested in some of the fossil fuels, but not in more. And you and I can have a larger conversation on the retiring CEO of Board of Pensions and how he decided that
Oh,
economy was more important than morality.
oh my gosh, how what a common tension that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yep.
Michael. Pardon. We'll get to you now.
No problem, no problem. Let me give a couple of disclaimers out real quick. First and foremost, I'm currently at my daughter's baby shower. Yeah, if you see, I'm
Woo!
granddaddy, so I've got about a good 45 minutes before I need to join and get back to work. The second thing that I want to say is, yo, I'm black. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but I'm a black man. I want to make sure y'all know that. The other thing that I want y'all to know that I'm from the South. And so it's within that context, me being black and me being from the South, that my story of origin and getting to this place comes from. I grew up in predominantly black Atlanta, predominantly black community, and my family is deeply enriched in the black church.
Mm.
I, I come from a long line of preachers and pastors and whatnot. However, I'm the first one to actually go and get formally trained, going to seminary and all of the things. I was pastor in a church. I was actually bivocational, and I lost my job. And I was pastor in a church, so I was looking for another job, and I happened to see this ad. Now, I didn't know anything about environmental justice. I knew I was experiencing it, but I never knew how to explain it because it was normalized. I grew up in it. Um, and so getting this job that I applied to, yeah, it just sounded like a real cool job description for a community development coordinator. And it was in South Carolina. I just thought it would be just a cool job to take, you know. Didn't know that I was actually stepping into actual ministry and my calling in ministry in that season or this season. Um, Again, I was already pastoring a church in Atlanta, historic church. So I was, as far as the credentials are concerned, I was pretty straight. The job, however, it called me to a greater calling in that I went to a seminar or a conference, excuse me, at Emory University in Atlanta. And there I met for the first time Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley. He was speaking and he made this statement. He said, how can I preach them in my pulpit, shout them in my pews, but they can't breathe in public? That quickened me and caused something in me to start looking further. And I was a part of Sustaining Way where I applied for this cool job, and they had a position open for South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. And I applied for that and became the director of South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. Uh, Knowing that I was getting deeper into this call, but not knowing the extent of which I would be deeper into this call. Uh, and again, it's a call. It's not something that I just chose and was opted in on, but I really feel like it was a call to do ministry, and here's why. I told you all I'm black. I also told you I grew up in the South. I grew up in Atlanta. I also experienced environmental justice, which I said. What I didn't say was growing up in the church, I never heard environmental justice taught or preached. I never even heard people testify to name environmental justice. They named what was going on with them, but they couldn't name the why. It was at that point when I got deeper into this that the call for pulpit ministry became less and less, and the call for getting out in community and being out in the streets was more and more for me. And so I started doing the work of environmental justice, the ministry of environmental justice, and hadn't looked back. Hadn't looked back, and it's actually grown me in different places. And one of the places it's grown me is to become an author. And so you hear more about our story, our origin story in the book. But I wanted to make sure I brought up the fact that I didn't come into this work seeking this work. This work sought me. But when it connected with me, it also spoke to the relevance of my upbringing in this work. And I was able to, I have been able to articulate that in ways that those who grew up with me understand it as well. So we all talk about it a bit more now.
Mm, mm. And which organization are you part of now?
Forgive me. I should have said that from the outset. So I started the People's Justice Council. We're also the not the owners. I don't know how you can be an owner, but we also house Alabama Interfaith Power and Light.
Oh, so you're still connected with Interfaith Power and Life.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not going anywhere from Interfaith Power and Light. The
Oh,
national organization went away, but the state affiliates are still up and running. Most
oh,
of us.
oh, I didn't. Okay. I I've known of it for a long time and met some people who worked in it, but didn't realize the national organization has gone away, but
Yeah. Yeah, the
states.
national organization last year they folded, but the state organizations are still alive and kicking.
Okay.
And
Okay.
last I checked, we had, I want to say 48 states,
Mm.
I think, or something like that. It may have decreased some because of the closure, but yeah, we had a pretty significant amount of
Yeah. I know
state affiliates.
my daughter in Richmond, California, has friendship with the Interfaith Power and Light person there. Um, does anyone want to comment on anything at this point? Thanks both of you for sharing these parts of your life journey.
Oh yeah, and Lee, everybody was talking about the seminary they went to. I went to the Interdenominational Theological Center, the ITC. I just want to make sure y'all know that.
The That's located in Atlanta or Decatur.
Yes.
Where is it?
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah, on the historic Atlanta University campus. We're part of a consortium of HBCUs.
I'll be darned. That sounds pretty fertile and bringing lots of threads together there.
It absolutely was. I just needed y'all Midwest folks to know that us folks in the South, we do something. That's all.
There's lots of people from the South who impress me a lot, more than some of the people in the North, you know? Okay, very good. Well, so you've been on the team with Cynthia Molobita, whom we had here a couple months ago. And so, you're on the website of Building a Moral Economy. And so how did you discover one another? How did she find you? How did you find her? How did this team come together? I have no idea. And what's the attraction to building a moral economy, which I'm attracted to, and I mean I realize every week, if not every day, how radical it is to talk like this because we have such gross immorality in our economy um, as it is. So, but how did you come to this team and to writing this book?
I I love this question because I love to get an answer to it. Uh, when I'm asked, how did this happen? How did you get to this? My answer is always, hell, I don't know. And the reason being is because I was sitting at my house in between Zoom calls, probably eating a sandwich or something, and I get a phone call from one of the dopest doctors I know, and that of the Reverend Dr. Abby Mohaupt, and asked me to be a part of this. So I will pass it on over to the maestro herself and let her take it from here.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Maestro.
so Cynthia and I knew each other from my work at Green Faith. At the time I was kind of um I was the director of education and training at Green Faith. The and Cynthia and I had worked together on several international environmental climate justice things. And in my PhD work, I'd been following her work pretty closely, and particularly remember um, early on in my coursework being at um, a conference and hearing this teeny tiny white lady talk about how white folks have to resist white supremacy. And she did it so succinctly and clearly. And I need to be friends with her. And so um, she asked me as part of my role at Green Faith if I would be on the group of people who would help her think through this book series on moral economy, particularly because of my work in the divestment from fossil fuels movement, but also because of the moral finance work that I was doing with Green Faith. And so she laid out kind of the plan for each of the books in terms of what each theme was. And then she said to us, like all of her advisors, if you know people who would like to write these books, or if you yourself would like to write one of the books, let me know. And so I wrote to her and said, I would love to co-write the climate justice book. And I would like us to ask Michael Malcolm to co-write it.
Whoa.
And she said, if you ask him, do you think he'll do it? And I said, well, I have no idea, but I want to do it. I want to ask him. And because Michael and I have worked together organizing um, the faith response to the climate strikes movement, and we had been part of the Christian response to Indigenous leaders calling us to um, ask Joe Biden to stop funding fossil fuels, and so it's kind of the dream that Michael would say yes. That especially as we um, as as we imagined the book about being really clearly about justice, both economic justice, but also racial justice. And I actually couldn't believe that Michael said yes when I asked him, because he's a powerhouse, and he said yes, and so we got to write the book. And really quickly, one of the things I'm most proud of in the book is that we found a way to keep each of our voices clear and separate, and not trying to erase either of our voices or to meld them together, but instead to say um, each of our experiences um, need to be, experiences and identities need to be preserved. And so in the book, the way that we did that is one of us took the lead on each chapter, and the other person responded in the chapter itself in italics. Um, and um, and that method allowed our voices to be authentic and true. It meant that Michael, as a Black man, got to stay a Black man and wasn't erased or whitewashed in an environmental book. And it meant that I got to be fully a mom and a woman without being erased into patriarchy. And I feel really proud of that and feel really grateful that Michael said yes.
It is.
I'm grateful for the ask. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the ask. Often in this work, um, well, you all that work in this work know it ain't that many black folk in this work. It ain't that
Mm.
many folk of color in this work when you look at the overall of it. And so we're often erased,
Yep.
uh, often unheard and unseen in spaces. And so having the opportunity to be seen and heard and know that I was seen and heard is just an honor. And again, thank you, Abby, for the invite.
I want to ask you, you first, Michael. Um, the the book is very clear and direct and strong in connecting environmental justice and racial justice. And I think it would be really helpful to have you say how in I mean how because I think you just kind of lived in it for a while in your life, but you came to consciousness and then you've come to the place where you write about this in a very articulate way. So I make that how did you come to make that connection and make it clearly?
So yeah, growing up in East Atlanta, um, I lived approximately between 5 and 10 miles from Conley, Georgia, which has one of the larger dump sites. Um, and so every every so often, not every so often, but every so often per day, we would smell rotten eggs or smell like rotten eggs. Um, we'd experience various illnesses, not just in the house, but also in the community that I grew up in. Mind you, we were living, and I had no idea that these emissions were poisoning us and making us sick. We were just living. This was the way that our community operated. Again, I'm a black man in the South growing up in a predominantly black community. The policies that allowed for this um, weren't weren't educated on, so we can advocate against it. Growing up in church, I never heard anybody preach sermons about environmental injustices. Never heard anybody use the examples of the various environmental injustices that were happening right along aside our worship. Uh, Never heard it mentioned in any illustrations or any meetings or any direct way whatsoever. And so, knowing that, the conviction on me is to make it plain for my community and those that I grew up to be able to understand it. You talked about, Lee, that we wrote in this direct way. That was very intentional. Uh, Plain talk for me is the only way that I want to be able to express myself. And my goal is that that 8-year old can hear what I've got to say and understand what I've got to say. But that 80-year old can be entertained by what I've got to say and understand what I've got to say. And so, in my communications, being direct, I wanted to make sure that we raise the issues of the various environmental injustices that we've seen throughout the Gulf, but also throughout the nation. Uh, excuse me, I wanted to make sure we raise those issues so that it no longer becomes a thing of people not being able to see how to marry scripture up with what's happening in our world today or in our communities today. It was important for me to make sure that we make it plain so that the communities I grew up in and those that'll read this book will be able to express in direct ways what's going on with them and know that it's not normal. It's not normal. But what I wanted to do more than anything is make sure that this book lived into what we wanted it to be and what we were talking about, which was being inclusive. One of the ways that society, and I'm gonna say this, dear white people, listen to me real close, lean in. One of the ways that we get locked out of society is through language. That's one of the supremacist ways. Even in environmental justice, if you read the book, we give the history of environmental justice, and it started with black folk in church. But because of environmentalism, the language got changed, and it's not even recognized that this was this was founded by black folk. You would think, because of what you see, that this was a whitely dominated uh, enterprise, if you will. But the reality is that it was always inclusive until it became exclusive, and it was done through language. So for me, it's important to give access through language. So we wanted to make sure it was plain, and I wanted to make sure that those that I grew up with, those that came from the communities like mine, are able to access the language to be able to express themselves. So they're both seen and heard. Check.
Yeah, so let's see, let me just give you a little response when I was reading this. Um, yeah, I was not surprised that environmental justice and racial justice were related, but you said it in a way, Michael, that really continues to prod my thinking because it is that environmental injustice and racial injustice are so closely linked that you can't really find a hair's breadth between them. And so so if someone says, well, that's a little extreme, Michael, to say it that strong, what's your response for that?
1 in 5 black communities live next to a industrial pollutant uh, facility. 1 in 5 black families live next to. I didn't say communities. I didn't even say wealthy or poor. I said 1 in 5 black families live next to a pollutant facility. Don't matter your economic status. I gave an example in the book of South Fulton. South Fulton has an illegal landfill that was burning uncontrollably. I don't know if they've gotten it under control or not at this point, but this illegal landfill that was burning uncontrollably in this upper middle class black community.
Mm-hmm.
These people, when I spoke with them, they said, man, we bought these houses thinking these were our forever homes.
Mm-hmm.
But now we feel like they're for our forever prisons.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say these were poor black people. These are people who are on the upper echelon of society in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So when people tell me that would say that that's extreme, look at it. Look at the status, statistics. Look at what's actually happened there demographically. Redlining is real. There's nothing extreme about it outside of the extreme way that my folk are forced to live.
Yeah,
You saying
excellent.
that it's an extreme or it's extreme is you making excuses to keep doing what you're doing instead of recognizing what's actually happening. What's extreme is the way that we're living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, very good. I'm so glad you've commented on this, and um, very helpful, Michael, very helpful. Um, Abby, just to get your voice back in here, what which chapter of you in your writing the book was your favorite one to work on? Did you somehow have the most juice around?
Um, I'm gonna answer that in a way that maybe sounds like I'm not answering the question, but it's um so the book is and the book is oriented around 10 different ways to build a moral economy around climate justice. And each of the books in this series follows kind of this 10-fingered approach, saying that there are 10 different ways that we're engaging and they all work together. And um, it was my job to write the chapter on individual action and how individuals um, can take on practices around economy and ecology to change the world and to make it more just and to make it more um, connected to each other. And I felt very strongly that it was my job to do it because I was the white person on our team, particularly because there's such a history of white environmentalists saying, you can take, you can, pick up trash or you can use a
Mhm.
reusable water bottle or stop using straws. And all of those are good practices, but they don't actually shape um, or change the ways in which people of color have been systematically abused by like the fossil fuel industry or um, uh, trash and waste systems. And it doesn't, those are kind of it's a privileged way of thinking about environmental action if it's not connected to systemic change. And so I knew it was my job to write it, and I felt super irritated about the chapter. Um,
Mhm.
like I spent a lot of time, I think I talked to my therapist about it and was like, I don't want to do it. I don't know how to talk about like how individual action is like important, but it doesn't actually matter. Um, I think I talked to my parents about it, and um, I think I like called my best friend and was like, "This is stupid. I don't want to do it." And then I think it was talking to my mom, sitting in her living room, realizing that our individual actions won't change the world, but they change who we are.
Mm.
And it matters who we are in this work. It matters, right? That part of my childhood story is that um, we composted no matter what. So much so that when we got 3 feet of snow in the winter, my dad shoveled a path to the compost pile so that we could keep composting. And that sounds like a nice story, and it also sucked to speak plainly. It sucked to have to um shovel 100 feet through that snow to get to the compost pile. And what it taught me as a kid is that you do the right thing even when it's hard. And that taught me as an environmentalist, a white person who seeks to be anti-racist, that like you do the right thing even when it's hard. Um, and that helped me in this chapter think through, okay, we can and should take on these practices. Like you should pick up litter, you should use reusable water bottles, you should um like ride your bike if you can. Um, and also those practices have to spur you on and ground you into the larger systemic work that we have to do. Um, so that everybody gets to breathe uh, clean air, not just white folks, not just rich folks. And for me, that chapter, which I just was such a pill. I think I stomped around the house for days being like, I don't want to do it. It's due in like 2 days and I don't want to do it. Um, and yet when I finally wrapped my head around like individual practice shapes us so that we can do the systemic work, um, then it was an easy chapter to write and it came quickly and became my favorite chapter because I just felt like it was um it then convicted me to think about what a privilege it is to be able to take on individual action. Um, and it reminded me of the absolute privilege of the way I was raised in order to not shy away from hard things. Um, yeah, I think that was my favorite chapter. It both my least favorite to write and also my favorite one in the end.
Now I want to go reread it. But the issue is huge,
Yeah,
I think. How do individual actions connect to the systemic?
yeah,
Uh, if we're not making that connection,
yeah,
mm,
yeah,
it's sad. It's sad. But if we make it, it gets us on a whole different path.
yeah.
Yeah. Michael, do you have a favorite chapter?
I would say that my favorite, well, the reason would be my favorite is because I labored with it the most. Not because it's like my favorite and it's like the standout one. It's my favorite because I survived through it. And I mean that in a real way. As I told the story of my origin in Atlanta, growing up again as a black man in the South, 70s, 80s, 90s was my forming years.
Mm,
Uh, I still had to experience the remnants of Jim Crow. I
mm,
had to experience the exclusiveness of certain spaces and places in Atlanta. I had to um, experience the hardships of growing up in a lower middle income uh, household with a large family. And so bringing all of that back up to lay it bare on paper was a hard thing to do. And I state that in the book that was by far the hardest chapter because that's not a pleasant experience overall, especially knowing what I know now. Growing up, I didn't know any better, so it was pleasant. But knowing what I know now, to be honest with you and to be, again, plain language, it makes me mad as hell when I think about the way that I grew up
mm.
and what was done to me because it's still being done. Let me go back real quickly, just real quick, because it's really just ticking on my heart.
Sure.
You said that they went over to Venezuela and bombed and captured. They didn't capture that man. They kidnapped that man, and we need to
Mm,
name it for what it is. They illegally bombed Venezuela and then took their leader, kidnapped their leader. And if we name it that way, perhaps we'll look at it different. Instead of us naming that there's a war that's happening over in Palestine, or Gaza, there's genocide that's happening over there, and we need to name it for what it is, so
mm,
that those of us who are of faith and moral conscience will be awakened to stand up and do something about
yeah.
it instead of allowing for it to continue to happen as if though we're part of polite society. The hell with polite society. We're part of what God says and what God says we're supposed to do. And what God says we're supposed to do is speak up when wrong is wrong. And wrong is wrong when it comes down to our activity over in Venezuela. Wrong is wrong when it comes down to our activity over in Gaza. Wrong is wrong when it comes down to our inactivity in Congo.
Mm.
Let me be very clear on that and let you
Thank
all know where I stand.
you. I had to say something, Jerry. Thank you, Michael.
Is that what you wanted to say, Geraldine? Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thank you. Um, does anyone else want to say something here? Whoever, I think Connie, you raised your hand.
Well, I'm just thinking they're all connected. You know, the injustice. I'm a member of the Center for Constitutional Rights, which is based in New York, but they're really doing a lot in the South and with the what's it called, Cancer Alley, for instance, in Louisiana, and um, and they have also come out uh, with a statement. At least they probably have done an action having to do with what's going on in Gaza. And so it's just, it is so helpful to me to hear both of you and the commitment and the zeal with which you are addressing these things. I really appreciate it. I want to know if your book, your series, your individual books have been treated at all by the Christian Century. Have you had any exposure in that kind of context?
I'm sorry, Connie. Ask that question again. I got distracted.
Well, I want everybody to know about this, and I want to know how my one of my sources of information, and I think Lee's is also is the monthly publication, The Christian Century, and they really focus on books. And if you haven't gotten the message to them, then maybe I need to, so that they feature it somehow.
Yeah, Connie, would you do that? Because we haven't yet been in Christian Century, but I think we'd love to be.
Okay, I will
Really.
have to connect with you and figure out how to do that or what to say to them. So, okay.
Great, thanks.
Michael?
Connie, I need to put you on that list. I got a list of who's the dopest, and you one of the dopest now. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Connie Charles.
Okay. Anyone else? I have another question that'll probably bring us to the end of the hour. This has been rich, you two. Thank you very much. My thank you comes from not from here, but from down below where you can even see on the screen. Um, how has this writing of this book or the process of coming to it changed your own spiritual journey? Who wants to go first? You've already, both of you said some stuff about it, but I'd like you to focus and answer right on that topic.
Well, I would say growing up, again, in traditional church, being a part of traditional church, I never saw God in this light. I can say that clearly. I'll say it one more time. Growing up in traditional church, in the communities that I've grown up in, I've never seen God. I never saw, excuse me, God in the light of environmental injustice. Um, and so I would say that have been greatly influenced. Um, greatly influenced and dramatically changed, if you will. Again, I was pastoring, y'all. I was pastoring the church. My trajectory was to either continue pastor in that church and grow it out, or to take over a church that was already grown out, because of the credentials as well as the family lineage and the background. I was pretty much guaranteed to grab me a nice sized church and be able to just be a pastor,
Mhm.
traditional pastor, and do all of that. This has called me out of the pulpit, and I feel way more comfortable in the streets than I do in somebody's sanctuary. And so I would say it dramatically changed me,
Mhm. Mhm.
dramatically changed.
Mhm.
Michael, do you think writing this book and digging deeper into, I'm thinking particularly the book of Acts and the book of Ruth, um, excuse me, shifted how you think about those texts in your ministry?
I can't say that because I came to the book with that. So that's why I didn't lean on that, Abby. I brought that to the book. I brought
Hmm,
those
hmm.
concepts to the book. That was something I already had in me. It didn't have the reason I said it dramatically changed me is because this wasn't at the whole my understanding of Acts,
Yeah.
the early church,
Yeah.
looking at Ruth and
Hmm.
the narrative of Ruth. None of that context was seen through the lens of my old self.
Yeah.
None of that. I couldn't interpret that scripture that way because traditionally I hadn't I hadn't heard anything like that before. It was after getting into this word that I started seeing this differently. That's what I was trying to explain. So I can say that this work has emphatically changed me. The book helped me to express that change. I'm not as crazy as I thought I was because there's a few people out there that happen to agree with me, and I didn't find that out until they read that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Abby, you want to comment on that?
Um, so I'm a Presbyterian minister that's serving the church as the director of a lifelong formation program um, at Garrett Seminary. Um, and this book has really helped me live into my vocation as a white person doing environmental justice as a person of faith through the lens of anti-racism, through the lens of moral economy. And I think writing this book helped me think through how to, as Michael says, how to make it plain,
Hmm.
and how to uh, um, and how to be less afraid about trying to say to people, um, you can't you can't be faithful if your investments, for example, don't match your faith, don't match your values, and you have to change it, even though it's a pain in the butt to change your investments, for example. Go do it. It's actually not impossible. And if somebody tells you it's impossible, get a different financial advisor. And um and kind of and I was already doing that kind of language at Green Faith and do Fossil Free Peace USA, but just getting even more clear about how that plain language is a spiritual practice, um, and leaning into that and to say system change around economy um, matters. Um, yeah, that's what I'll say.
It's very good. Thank you both. Um, we're very close to the end of our time together, and I think Michael has to get on to another commitment here shortly. Uh, the book is just 100 pages. Climate justice, climate hope, and pathways to courage, part of the building a moral economy. I think we've heard you talk about the way you're finding pathways to courage and encouraging us. Appreciate that a lot, and for the authenticity of your voices. Um, so unless there's someone else who has another concluding thought, um, wow, what more can I say? But thank you so much, and I look forward to whenever the next book comes out to continue to be part of the building a moral economy with you all. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having us.
Okay, you're sure welcome.
Take good care. Bye.
The same to you all. Okay, we're going to end this recording if I know how.